so let's go ahead and review. We're going to start transitioning here into looking at the LEQ. I know that yesterday with Mr. Pulaski, you looked at the DBQ, but I want us to look at the LEQ and really see that if you can write one of these essays, you can write them both. Now, if you're taking the digital part of the exam, you're not going to be writing an LEQ. You're going to be taking an additional SAQ section, but this is still important for you to pay attention to because like I just said, writing an LEQ is very, very similar to writing a DBQ. So on the LEQ portion of the test, you get a choice of which essay you're going to write. There are 3 different essays that all deal with the same theme. So if you've got the themes in APUSH, maybe migration and settlement, politics and power, America and the world, whatever the theme is, it's all going to be the same. And it's also all going to be the same style of question. They're either all going to be comparison, all causation, or all continuity and change over time. The difference is the time period. So you're going to be able to choose which one you know the most about to write your answer. All right, so now let's compare the rubric. You went into much detail yesterday in the second session on the DBQ rubric, contextualization and thesis. Look at that. It's identical to the LEQ rubric. So this would be in your introductory paragraph. Then you're going to, where you're using documents here in the DBQ, you're creating your own evidence in the LEQ. You're still supporting your argument. So here where you're describing the document and supporting the argument with supporting the argument with the document, here you're creating your own evidence, but still supporting the argument. You're not going to have sourcing in an LEQ because you don't have any documents, but what you do need is historical reasoning. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this particular point in just a second and how you can set yourself up to make sure that you're making those arguments. This is the argument. This is what we started with: causation, continuity and change over time, and comparison. And then you have the complexity point, which is really more or less the sophistication of your essay and how you frame your argument. And you can't really point to one thing and say, oh, there's my complexity. It's throughout. It's the way you frame your essay and it's the way that you write it. All right. So outside information on the DBQ is the evidence that you're coming up with in the LEQ. It's what you know about the topic. All right. So let's look at an example. So if we are planning out an LEQ, and this is an old LEQ, and I'm actually going to change the wording a little bit to kind of make it a little bit more clear, and it deals with those political parties. So to what extent did political parties contribute to the development of national unity in the United States 1790 to 1840? I'm going to adjust the wording a little bit. So evaluate the extent to which political parties fostered, which means causes, national unity in the United States between 1790 and 1840. So 1790, that's going to be when George Washington becomes president, and then 1840 would be kind of around the time of Jackson. So, and we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson, because after that whole corrupt bargain business, guess what? Jackson ends up coming in and winning the next election. All right, so the first thing you need to do is figure out what the question type is. This one would clearly be a causation question. And then you want to plan out your essay. And I really liked the way Mr. Pulaski talked about that last night, that you need to plan out your essay before you actually write your thesis. So here we've got the causation part of this, and you come up with the causes, right? So if we're saying political parties, did they or did they not foster national unity? That's a causation question. But what you want to think about here in this one is, did the political parties contribute to national unity, or did they hurt national unity, right? So did it cause it, or did it hurt it? Which is really kind of the same thing. I hope that's making sense to you. And I'm going to show you how we would plan that out. So here is just a way that I felt like we could look at how you would frame an essay. Now, obviously, you're not going to have any planning sheet like this on your essay or on your exam, but you can certainly make a jot list that looks like this. So the first thing I need to do on an LEQ, I've got to come up with some ideas about national unity and political parties during those time periods. What do I know? Well, I know a lot about the parties themselves, and I know a lot about their ideas. So here are some of the assertions or claims or categories. Your teacher may have called them different things, but I want to plan it out and try to create some answers here. All right, so my first claim, I'm going to say that we were actually pretty unified when we were threatened from the outside. Think about the War of 1812, right? So we unified, and those who weren't unified, their party collapsed. So I would say that we were fairly unified here. Not completely, but when there was a foreign threat, we tended to come together. So War of 1812 might be some evidence. And then also Monroe Doctrine, where we're looking at and saying, here in our hemisphere, we're going to take care of ourselves, and then we're not going to worry about that in Europe. Okay, then we start to divide clearly with these political parties over how we interpret the Constitution. Well, Hamilton's financial plan, that's definitely something that they were divided on in the early part of that time period. And then we're also going to be talking about the bank war with Andrew Jackson in a few minutes. That would be another example where they're fighting over, does the Constitution allow us to create a Bank of the United States? And then, as we were saying, federal power versus state power. So I would have my three arguments here. Yes, we were unified when there was a foreign threat for the most part, but we were not unified. The parties did not unify the United States when it came to how you interpret the Constitution and how you are looking at federal versus state power. So once we've planned that out, then we come back up here and look at our contextualization and thesis. So here's what I would look at. If I'm talking about unity, probably the most unified we would get would be during the colonial period, during the Revolution, right? When we come together to fight that Revolutionary War against the British. So we could probably develop some background here about developing national identity and the connection with the Revolutionary War. Here's my thesis statement. Now, I'm going to take these claims and I'm weaving them together in a concise statement that answers the question and provides my line of reasoning. So I've got, although Americans remain unified between 1790 and 1840 when faced with European threats, there's claim number one. National unity was more commonly hurt by political parties over issues related to constitutional interpretation and appropriate levels of federal power. So that's how I would plan out my essay. All right, so then we would structure our body paragraphs the same way. Now, that historical reasoning point that I mentioned, that historical reasoning point is asking you to make an evaluation related to causation, comparison, or continuity and change over time, depending on the question. Where I think this fits best is with the topic sentences of your paper. So if I've got, here's my intro paragraph, then body paragraph number one, I'm going to have a topic sentence, then my evidence, and I explain it and tie it back. Same thing with body paragraph two and body paragraph three. Let me show you what that looks like. So if these were my three claims, then body paragraph number one, look at my topic sentence. Americans remain mostly unified between 1790 and 1840 when faced with European threats. Then I provide my examples. This is what I'm trying to prove within that body paragraph. So I'm talking about causation. Did it cause unity? Yes, I'm saying it did in this way. Then in my second body paragraph, no, it did not remain unified. National unity actually diminished in the period with political parties as they divided over constitutional interpretation. So again, that's answering that causation question. And then I provide my examples and my evidence. And then same thing with the third one. National unity was most severely damaged as political parties disagreed over the appropriate levels of federal and state power. So I'm making an evaluation. This is my opinion. You may totally disagree with me, and that is just fine, because that's what an essay is about. It's you building an argument that you can prove. So this is where I'm saying that it hurt the most, this federal versus state power. All right, so I hope that was clear. Next thing